Hello, and welcome to Come Play With Us, a spooky storytelling podcast. My name is Leela, and I'm joined by my evil twin,
Ruby. We're actually both the evil twin. We're both writers with non-writer day jobs. We believe in the power of great storytelling, so we've invited guests with the challenge of weaving a tale about real-life hauntings and paranormal activities with the sole purpose of scaring the shit out of us.
We'll rate them to see how they've done. Our ratings go a little something like this: scared shitless, some chills, and I think I'll be able to sleep tonight. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we are welcoming again Grandma.
And this time, Ruby, I will tell you a story. And
All right.
Are you guys all alone at home?
No.
No?
No.
Grandma, are you alone at home? You're
No,
not?
I don't think so.
This is one of those ones where it's like you just want to cuddle up if you're alone with under your blanket. Because my story takes place in an isolated region in Germany. It's truly chilling. And I wish we were telling the story at night because I feel like it's too bright, but we all did our best to shut the curtains and get it all dark and creepy. All right. And with that, I shall begin my tale. You guys ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all ready for this?
I'm under my blankie.
Good, me too. I'm calling my story The Happening at Hinterkaifeck Farm. I don't know if I'm going to end up pronouncing everything right because it's all German, but I will certainly do my best.
I'm going to interrupt you and say I already know the story, but I want to hear your version of it.
Oh, that sucks. All right.
I don't know the story.
Oh, good. Okay.
I don't think.
All right. It started with the noises in the attic. In the early months of 1922 in Bavaria, Germany, the Gruber family lived on a farmstead with their maid. They consisted of parents Andreas and Kazilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, and Victoria's two young children, a daughter also named Kazilia after her grandmother, and a son named Joseph. However, this family had a peculiar reputation in their small, tight-knit community. Kazilia, the matriarch, was an older widow when she met and married Andreas. She was pious and friendly and often had to step in to settle disputes between her husband and their neighbors, of which there were many. Andreas, her husband, was known to be reclusive, hot-tempered, and generally gruff to be around, straining his relationship with his neighbors. He'd also been cruel and abusive to his family and employees and often threatened others with weapons from his farm. Only one of his children survived into adulthood. This was Victoria, his daughter. She was a single mother since her husband had died during World War I in France around 1914. She was hardworking and reserved, but also known for her beautiful singing voice. And then there were her children, who also lived on this farm. Rumors swirled around their parentage, particularly around 2-year-old Joseph. 7-year-old Kazilia was a bright, inquisitive, and studious child with an aptitude for learning and caring for the animals on their farm. But Joseph was believed to be the product of an incestuous relationship between Andreas and his daughter, Victoria, since Victoria's husband had died 7 years before his birth. They were both convicted of the crime. They were both convicted of the crime of incest, because that's how it was back then, right? It was the woman's problem, or it was her fault. And Andreas had briefly served time in prison. He was also possessive of his daughter, going so far as to prevent her from...
Wait. So if he spent time in prison, that he was guilty of it?
Yeah. But they were both convicted, but he's the one who served time in prison. I don't know why she didn't.
Okay, so it's confirmed.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't confirmed. It was they were convicted of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we don't know.
Oh, well, by the way, while it wasn't confirmed, his behavior around her, like his possessiveness of her, and some of the comments that he'd made about her, it just only made it more, you know, the likelihood greater that he was had been molesting her from a young age. So he would also he prevented her from remarrying, including a man who actually might have been the father of Joseph. But it was clear that there was some sort of abuse going on, whether physical or sexual. And it only added to the family's isolated situation in their rural community. Their neighbors and their community frowned upon the scandal and basically shunned the family. And then, when the happenings at Hinterkaifeck Farm started, that did not make things better for this family. The maid was the first to hear the footsteps. At night, when the farmhouse was quiet and the family had retired for bed, the attic became alive with the presence shuffling around on the worn floorboards. She alerted Andreas to the constant noise, but it wasn't until he had been awakened by the noises himself, one cold winter night, that he went up to search. But within the shadows of the attic, he found nothing and no one to explain the noises. Not long after, they'd had a recent snowfall, and what Andreas did find were fresh tracks in the snow that seemed to lead from the nearby woods to the house, but no footsteps or tracks that led back to the woods. Still, there was no sign of a break-in or intruders. Andreas again did a thorough search of the property and found nothing. Keys and tools began to go missing, and a Munich newspaper showed up mysteriously in their home when none of them had any familiarity with or a subscription to the paper. No one in their vicinity was a regular reader, and Andreas hadn't remembered buying it. Munich was about 40 miles south of them, but it should be noted that Munich, as well as the state of Bavaria that they are from, were actually the birthplace of the Nazi Party, which was in its infancy during this time. So could this have anything to do with the hauntings? We don't know, but already there's a pretty grim connection there. And the maid, day in and day out, as she went about her work, couldn't shake the feeling of constantly being watched by an invisible presence. And so she did what anyone of us would do. She quit. She basically was like, you guys are living in a haunted house, and I can't deal with this. She had not signed up to work among ghosts, and she was not going to stick around for more strange occurrences. So they eventually had to hire a new maid after some time. The neighbors by now knew what was going on at the farm and urged the family to go to the police, since they really had no other way to deal with the supernatural. But Andreas didn't believe in the occult or in ghosts, and because there was no other evidence to explain what was going on, he just brushed it all off. He figured it was just the local kids playing a prank on them, and for that reason, he just went about his business as usual. And then there was that night that his daughter Victoria fled from the house in terror. Her daughter had told one of her friends at school that her mother had fled after a violent quarrel, but this didn't explain why she was found wandering the forest, disoriented and alone, after hours of searching. So the neighbors continued to leave the family alone. The family was not interested in anyone's help in trying to fix this issue of what was going on in their house, and already with Andreas being a rude and cruel man, and this family just having their own weird, creepy secrets, the community just basically gave up on them. And so they decided, let's just let them deal with their own issues, and they did. And then after some time, the neighbors realized, wait, we actually haven't seen the Grubers in a while. Kazelia had stopped going to school, and the family hadn't shown up to church. It appeared that the family had just holed itself up at the farm, basically just secluding themselves even further. A local repairman came by the farm to repair an engine, and no one engaged with him for hours while he did his work. The family was clearly home. The lights were still on at their farm, smoke rising from the chimney. Their farm was well tended, and the livestock healthy and fed. So it's not like they had left. 2 coffee sellers came by to take an order, but no one came to the door, and they left. After about 4 or 5 days, the neighbors became concerned and decided to confront the family about their absence. When the Grubers didn't answer their door, the neighbors went to the barn to see if anyone was inside that they could talk to. That's where they found Andreas, Victoria, and the two Kazilias inside. It's not clear who they came upon first, but what the neighbors quickly discovered once they looked beneath an old stable door was that all 4 family members were dead, and their bodies were stacked on top of each other. They'd all of them had been bludgeoned to death. I'm not going to go into detail. It's very, very gruesome. So once they finally went inside the house, they found the body of Joseph and the new maid, who had only been employed for a day before she met her death. Both had also been bludgeoned to death. Again, I'm not going to go into detail, but there's some very gruesome detail, and I'm going to spare our listeners because it is pretty terrible. It was clear that the family had been dead for days. But what was even stranger is that the house had somehow remained tidy throughout. The fire well tended, the farm and livestock looked after, the cows milked, and food consumed and disposed of. The neighbors realized they were now looking at the aftermath of something far more terrifying than a haunting. Now all the stories and rumors about Hinterkaifeck and the Grubers' own testimony surrounding the happenings there began to make sense. But there was a larger mystery at the core of the horrors found on the property. How did the Grubers die, and why? But also, who would be so unhinged as to be hiding on this family's property, plotting their demise? For one thing, and I guess I want to say, it's clear now that there was someone on their property. It explains all the things that went missing, the footsteps, the newspaper. So investigators found that when investigators finally started to try and put the pieces together, they found that the crime scene was inconsistent and contaminated because neighbors had walked in and out, searching the property, and the perpetrator or perpetrators had continued to live in the home with the dead for days, further compromising the evidence before eventually disappearing. And the murder weapon was also missing. What was even harder was to find a motive. A large amount of money was found in the house, so a robbery was ruled out. And you have to remember that this is a small rural community, so there was less of a chance of an outsider coming in to commit the crime. It didn't help that the family were already outcasts and that Andreas hadn't made a lot of friends. So there was quite a large list of suspects, including Victoria's deceased husband that people believed, what if he'd never died and he came back and he exacted revenge for her, incestuous relationship with her father. Or it could have been her married lover who had wanted to leave his wife and marry her, him potentially being the real father of Joseph. But none of these investigations panned out. Others came forward with stories of unrecognizable individuals they had encountered around the farm after the murders, but again, it was all inconclusive. So to this day, the Hinterkaifeck farm incident is a nearly 100-year-old cold case. No one back then or now knows who snuck onto the family property, lived among the Grubers for days, stealing items, sneaking around the house, watching them while they slept, and plotting their murder, and then continued to live among their dead bodies once they had been beaten to death, enjoying their stolen comforts. A year after the terrible events at Hinterkaifeck, the farmhouse became a nuisance to the community. People were traveling from all over to walk among the site of the grisly murders, and so the property was actually torn down and every evidence of the family that lived and died there was removed. It was during this time that the murder weapon was finally recovered. It was a farming tool, a pickaxe, but even though they'd found the tool, it still did nothing to solve the mystery. So, like the apparition it was once thought to be, the killer or killers vanished without a trace. For years, the land that made up the property of Hinterkaifeck was thought to be cursed. There were rumors of ghostly sightings, a sense of unease when you were there, and feeling watched when on the property. But by whom? Remnants of the deceased or the killer's still lingering gaze? So to me, this story gives new meaning to what really goes bump in the night. Next time you hear strange noises, things go missing, you find disembodied footprints and random items appear on your dinner table, maybe a simple ghost isn't really the most likely answer. maybe humans and their capacity for stealth, calculation, and cruelty really are more frightening than the supernatural. So if you ever think your house is haunted by noisy or restless spirits, there really could be something much more horrifying hiding inside your walls and stalking you and watching you and plotting for you a very gruesome end. The end.
That land is probably really haunted now.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
nothing on there now except for like a plaque that commemorates like what
What year
happened to
was
these people. 1922. It was
that's
like
sad.
I think it was I think they died on March 31st, 1922, and then their bodies were found a few days later.
It's kind of unsettling.
It's very
Yeah.
unsettling. Yeah, I was pretty creeped out by it
I
while I
used
was
to hear
working on it.
I used to hear footsteps when I lived at my house in Dallas. That's what I could, but I didn't think there were any intruders.
Leela heard footsteps. Remember Leela years ago in our old house in Carrollton? We were up late watching TV. I think I fell asleep, and Leela heard someone coming down the stairs.
I heard someone coming down the stairs, and then I looked over to see who it was, because you just do that instinctively,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no one there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because, like, living in New York, I hear footsteps all the time. It's my neighbors. Like, you nearly can't be scooped. You nearly can't be spooked because you're like, well, it's ambient New York City living sounds.
So basically, like, our neighbors just drown out the real ghosts that are living in our apartments by just walking around. By
The
virtue of
ghosts
walking
are
around.
like, that's great. They'll never suspect us.
Yeah. To me, what creeped me out the most about this story was that it really started off feeling like a haunted house tale, and then it just ended up being something so much more scary than that. It's like, yeah, and then it makes you redefine what horror really is, right? Like, is it things that go bump in the night, or is it like human, some reality? Is it something much more real than that? But I will say, like, the story has continued to fascinate people. There's so many blogs and articles about it. There's other podcast episodes about it. I think it was like in 2007 there was like this like institute in Germany that they tried to go back and go through all the evidence and go through whatever, like, what's that word, contemporary accounts to try and solve it, and even they can't. But also a lot of the evidence was destroyed during World War II. I think it was like a bombing or a fire. So it's just stolen people's imagination.
Maybe it was. So sometimes when I think of things like that, where it's a small community and someone killed someone, and it's maybe someone or people the community already has issue with, I feel like it was a community effort to hide the truth.
But that's the thing, is like, if it was, why would you kill the children? Like, one of them was a 2-year-old toddler,
There's never a reason to kill a child.
No. So it's like, Andreas was a dick, like,
Yeah.
and I mean, I don't want to go into the detail, but from whatever investigations they had, it appeared that the way that the 4 people who were found in the barn were killed, they were lured out there one by one. So they could have scared the animals, and the animals started to kind of make a noise, and then one person went out there, and then another person, oh, they haven't come back, let me go, what's taking them so long? And so there was an effort to kill every single member of this family. And I think that that's what has kind of just grabbed onto people's imaginations, or just their interest, is like, why? The why is the biggest thing that has not been explained or solved.
Okay, so with that murder weapon, did they not do any like DNA analysis on it or anything?
They didn't have that in 1922.
Yeah. And then I'm sure if they kept it until like the 90s, when DNA testing became possible,
by then it's whatever's there is degraded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And dead.
And you have to remember too that World War II happened right after that, or like 20 years after that. But like, a lot of evidence was destroyed. Yeah, they weren't like how we are now with evidence. Back then, you really just had testimony. You really, we didn't have the forensics that we do now. And of
That
course,
just makes it more sad because it's like they really did not have any other ways of finding out like information from the evidence that they had.
Yeah,
it's like, oh,
and
here's
again,
a murder weapon, but like that's it.
And again, like you have to remember too that this family already were outcasts, so we don't know what kind of testimony they got, And I did read something that there were some people that also were like, well, they deserve this because of their sinful.
That's what I was talking about. Like, what if it was, a community where like they're the, it's like everyone hides everyone's secrets.
Like, what if the community was all in on it?
That's what I mean. Like, then why kill? Like, Andreas was a dick, and his wife was like friendly and sweet and caring.
It's the same people who said they deserved it. It's whoever said that or believed that.
Yeah. But then what's also even scarier is whoever killed them stayed on the farm.
Yeah, that's so disgusting. Just chilled with dead bodies.
There was dead bodies in the stable, and they're like, oh well, and they're like feeding the animals, they're milking the cows, they're eating the food. It's so weird.
Like they care, like they wanted to kill people. They're like, oh, I can't let the cows starve. Poor cows.
That's where we draw the line.
Yeah, but humans.
Well, they did attack the I think it was a dog. They had a family dog that the dog survived. Oh. But I think a neighbor had heard a dog howling like in the barn, and then they found a dog, and then the dog ended up going and living with like one I think someone's family member, and
the dog couldn't tell the tale.
All right, well let's do our ratings. Rama, I think you know the deal, but it is the least scary is I think I'll be able to sleep tonight. The medium scary is some chills.
Some chills, and then scared shitless.
Yes.
She knows the drill.
The highest is longtime listener.
Yes.
All right, so what do you think, Grandma?
I'm going to say some chills. Some chills. I was quite chilled. It's more like it's just more sad than anything because like these people were not well known, so they don't really get that justice either.
Yeah, so you're thinking more of like in a forensic way of like the victims.
Yeah, like they're just never gonna know what happened. We're not gonna know what happened until I guess we know what happened. Like the whole Jack the Ripper stuff. But yeah, I think I can. Yeah, some chills is very fitting for me.
Yeah. What about you, Leela? You already knew the story, though, Leela.
Right. So I already knew the story. So for me, it's some chills. And I do understand why you didn't want to go into some details, but I think some details would have been helpful. Like even more what the investigation revealed. Like the luring one by one, like that within the story would have been helpful. And I know you don't have to get gory or gruesome.
I was like, I did some of the stuff. I was like, I really wish I hadn't read this.
I know, and I have listened
very disturbing.
to some episodes that go into detail about certain things, and you're like, yeah I'm good. So I understand, and I don't personally feel like, especially when they're true stories, there's a need to go into gratuitous details as if we're all kind of spectators, and it's something that I don't know that you as someone would enjoy rehashing. But I think some level of detail, would have helped kind of the mind use the imagination. But also, I already heard the story, and it is scary. It's scary that someone like frogging, like those. Have you heard frogging?
No, I've never heard of
that movie. I See You.
When the first time I heard term frogging, I was like, is that a sex thing? Like, what are we talking about?
It always immediately sounds like a sex thing. But no, it's that movie. Have you seen the movie I See You, Grandma?
I don't think I have. No.
Okay, well, that's actually a pretty good movie.
It's streaming, but it's similar in that you start by thinking it's a ghost story because there's things that go up in the night, and then you find out that there's this thing called frogging where people can just sneak into your home and your house is so big, you have guest rooms that no one really goes into for any reason. So you can just like bunk out in these people's homes, and when they're not there, you can eat out of their fridge and watch their TV and shit like that. And so I guess this person was like, that's scary in and of itself. This person was just frogging.
I'm always like, I invite hauntings and I invite creepy things, but then it's like, but what if I invite it and it actually isn't a spirit? It actually is it's a human being that has a capacity for violence. That's what scared me. That's kind of where I came to the story. But thank you both for your rating.
You're welcome.
And thank you to our listeners. We are now officially global. We have listeners on. Thank you. Clap for me. Clap for us.
Clap for me.
We have listeners in every continent: North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Oceania, and South America. We got our first South American.
But what about Antarctica? Maybe we have yet to get someone in Antarctica.
Well, Buzzsprout doesn't show stats for Antarctica, so people on the base probably don't listen. But we got our first South American download in Argentina. So hello, Argentina. And yeah, we are now officially global. We have downloads in every region. So
keep listening, everybody.
Keep listening. Thank you so much for listening. Please rate us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Reviews are also very helpful. It only makes it easier for us to reach more people around the world and give people chills or maybe scare them shitless. The idea of just connecting with people like that is just so amazing to know that we've moved someone in a certain way, and so we want to keep it up, and with our listeners' help, we will.
Yep. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us at podcomeplaywithus@gmail.com. Catch y'all later. Bye.